Good afternoon, guys. Today's video I'm going to go through the March vegetable garden tour. I'm going to sort of show you what's going on in the vegetable beds and the allotment. I'm going to look a little bit about what's growing under cover, and I've even got a few very simple harvests to do. So yeah, let's get into it. Right, so first off is the bed that's growing garlic. On this side I've got the store-bought garlic. So I bought a bulb for, I don't know, I bought a couple bulbs that were 39p each, split them up, took the biggest cloves, planted them, and I'll do some close-up pictures, but it's looking really good, and even some of the stems are looking quite thick, so it's growing a lot quicker than this other garlic here, which is the sort of seed-bought garlic, so Solent White variety, which is a soft net variety, and I've got 2 bulbs of elephant garlic as well, which are growing. But yeah, this is looking really good, really green, and it's really nice this time of year to see some sort of nice lush greenery in the garden. So if you're planning your garden, definitely make sure that, in sort of September, October time this year, you sow yourself some garlic. Right next to the garlic bed is my newest bed, and I made a video on how to build this. I'll put a link to it, up on the video. But yeah, really simple, filled it with compost, and I've basically been putting in my sort of spares. So I had a couple spare broad beans, which I've stuck in here just as a kind of contingency plan. If things elsewhere die, I can dig them up and move them, fill gaps, but really just using that for now. And I was also really lucky when I was down at the allotment filming another video. One of the other allotment goers offered me some sort of bare root strawberries. Sorry, they weren't necessarily bare roots, they had a few shoots of growth, so I've planted them in here, and the idea is, I'm hoping, is that they'll sort of tumble out. And I have also planted a few strawberries nearer the house, because with growing strawberries, the big thing is pests, birds, and pretty much everything likes to eat strawberries. So having them closer to the house means potentially you might get a little bit less sort of pest pressure on your sort of crops. Right, so this doesn't look like much, but here there are my onion seedlings. So I sowed my onions in, I think it was one of the last days of December. It might be like the 29th of December. So grow them on indoors, germinate them indoors, and then plant them out pretty much almost any time. They're quite frost resistant, so you haven't got to worry as long as you're not getting too hard a freeze. Now, I've got them under this bird netting, and there's an example of that, and I'll quickly just put it up on the screen where I think something's been pecking at my onions. But onions don't really have very many pests. You haven't got to worry about caterpillars or slugs or anything, but what you have got to worry about is birds basically thinking the little shoots are like little bits of grass, and they just pull the whole plant out of the ground, and it obviously just dies because the roots come out and things. So I do find bird netting, at least until they get a little bit bigger, a little bit thicker, really helps make sure you get the best out of your onions. So about the same time as the onions, I sowed my broad beans. The broad beans, little tip for if you have sown them, is once they've germinated, get them outside. As long as it's not like sort of -5 weather or anything quite extreme like that for us, the broad beans will be fine. So for example, there was a frost today, and other than this one sort of tipping over a bit, I might give him a little sort of stake support, these are fine, and these will grow quite happily. A couple of them are tillering. Now, for those of you who don't know, maybe you haven't grown broad beans before, tillering is where from one stem you get new stems coming up from the base. So I'll show you what that looks like, and that's perfectly normal for broad beans. Come May time, most of these will have maybe 4 or 5 different stems all shooting up from the base, and they'll all support flowers, they'll all support obviously beans. So quite happy with this. And great thing with broad beans as well, the reason I grow broad beans, I'm not a huge fan of eating them, they're not the most special beans, and they do take up quite a lot of space. That's something else to consider, but it gives verticality in the garden when there's no other verticality or height, and it makes the garden look a bit more aesthetically pleasing when you've got like a nice tall sort of jungly like plant to sort of look at. So here under my custom made hoop house, I've got some cabbages, kale and chard, but I think I need some help from someone in the comments regarding what to do with my cabbages, and I'll just give you a close-up of what I'm talking about. So in the summer, I sowed some cabbages, thinking for like a sort of a winter, early spring harvest, and all of the cabbages are really tall. So there it is, and it goes down all the way to the base. They've all grown like they're sort of bolting or going to flower. There's not really a head on any of them. They're just loads and loads of loose leaves. So I really just wonder if anyone in the comments can tell me if there's going to be a harvest here, or whether I should cut my losses and make room for other plants. So if anyone knows, that would be great. I mentioned at the start of the video about harvesting, and the harvest I've got here is some lovely kale. Now, I'll do a little closer with these plants, but I think they're very pretty plants, and I think as well as that, they're super productive. They seem to just, keep producing leaves even through winter. So I've been picking this, and you can see here on the stem all the different pickings I've done, and I've still got more harvest to come. So I'm going to harvest these, and I'll do a quick little sort of video of it. But what I would say, whenever you're harvesting something, have a bucket to put sort of waste matter in, any weeds that you find, any dead dying leaves, so that you can sort of, as you're harvesting, put all your nice sort of eating harvest in here, but then have a bucket so at the same time you can just be throwing in all the dead decaying sort of matter and things, so at the same time as harvesting you tidy up your beds. And I think that's really good sort of practice. Another great plant to be harvesting this time of year is chard. Now, the only problem I have with chard in this garden is where I'm growing it, there's a tree above which lots of pigeons like to sit in, so I get lots of bird mess on the leaves, which obviously makes them a bit inedible. But basically, you just got to be careful, and eventually you find some that are good. And the great thing this time of year is the chard is putting up its new growth, so it's really tender, sweet, sort of succulent leaves. And it's an absolute treat when you sort of get to pick your own vegetables this time of year, and it's super fresh. So before we move on to looking at the fruit and the sort of allotment, just a little thing on compost making. Now, one of the biggest tips I think I can give you on compost making is to make the surface area of your compost material as small as possible. So like here, I've just collected loads of cabbage leaves and kale leaves and sort of some chard leaves from the sort of bed behind me, just tidying it up. And I want to add it to the compost. And if I add it like this, that's fine, but it's going to be big layers of wet, slimy leaves. What will be much better is if it's finely chopped, and you can do all sorts, run it over with a mower, suck it up with a leaf blower that's got one of those blades in it, or very simply, if you've got a pair of shears, you can just sort of chop it up. So reducing the surface area will simply make the compost material break down quicker. So another tip is to think about what you're adding to your compost. Ideally you want 50% green material, 50% brown material. So obviously I'm adding here quite a lot of green, so I know the next load of stuff I add will have to be some brown material. And that's quite fortunate because I've got a trim sort of herbaceous border, so I'll get lots of brown twiggy material that I can add to this, or I could add sawdust for my guinea pigs and things like that. So it's just about having different sources of carbon and nitrogen materials. So in terms of growing under cover, things are starting to get quite busy in my little plastic greenhouse here. These plastic greenhouses, by the way, I think are brilliant. The really big ones I don't think are as good. I think there's too much risk of like storm damage and things like that. But these little ones I think are brilliant for sort of propagating seedlings. So in here, and I'll go through a sort of close-up of each, but I've got some sort of spinach. I've then got some multi-sown beetroot. I've then got different varieties of lettuce, including some home saved seed lettuce, but that hasn't particularly germinated very well, and my guess is probably because of my sort of poor control of the seed conditions maybe. But I have definitely got some coming up. I think I've got maybe 10 or 12 sort of lettuce plants from my home saved seeds, so I'm really happy with that, and I can't wait to grow these on and see how they get on. I've got some spring onions, some rocket, some more radishes, and down here I've got some flowers. I've got some lupins, and I've got some sort of poached eggplants, which are doing really well actually. So yeah. So very quickly, in terms of the plum tree, nothing too much going on, but I will give you a quick zoom in. Some of the buds do seem to be greening up and coming into life. So yeah, really looking forward to seeing this flower and sort of produce some fruits. Before we head to the allotment, I thought I'd just talk about the blueberries. And I made a short yesterday on this, and these buds are really starting to open up, and I'll get you some nice close-ups. But I can't wait to sort of growing these and harvesting these again. And exciting news as well is some of the hardwood cuttings that I took and softwood cuttings I took last year are also starting to bud, which is indicating that the cuttings have taken. Now, propagating sort of difficulty varies plant to plant, but blueberries are something that's known as somewhat difficult to propagate. So the fact that mine, and I'll do a quick video of it, are have taken, I'm super happy with, and I can't wait to sort of give them to friends and things. So for those of you that follow my channel, you'll know that in February I got myself an allotment. Now the allotment hadn't been cultivated for at least 2 years, maybe more, but last couple of weekends I've been spending a lot of time here at the allotment, creating paths, creating beds. So I'll just quickly show you around, and yeah. So you see here the plot, so from basically the hedge to this kind of grass path that runs down, and all I've basically done is I've marked out 4 beds, put some cardboard down, and then laid a sort of wood chip sort of path. There is some black weed membrane down just to sort of suppress the weeds. I would have preferred not to do it, but this is a really super weedy allotment, so I think it's needed. Next week's video, I'm going to be putting compost down onto these beds here, just a really thick layer of compost, and then a bit like a sort of Charles Dowding method to sort of get the beds ready for planting in. I really hope you guys like this video. Don't forget, if you do, like and subscribe, and I'll see you all soon for more videos.